is Jessica Gladstone, and I'm a postdoctoral researcher in the psychology department at New York University. And I'm here today with Dr. Jessica Decuir-Gunby. Her students call her Dr. DG. And she is a professor of educational psychology in the Department of Teacher Education and Learning Sciences and the director of graduate programs at North Carolina State University. So thank you for being with me today.
Thank you.
So let's get into it. How can we as researchers help create more inclusive learning environments?
I think there are a lot of different ways and different strategies that we can use. As one really easy way is that we can actually make our courses and classes more culturally representative, particularly in kind of expanding the way we actually create our curriculum, particularly the types of readings, for instance, the types of readings that we use actually include more authors of color or more readings that come from that talk about diverse topics, particularly people of color, LGBTQ issues, people with disabilities. Particularly, for instance, we're teaching classes on motivation. There are a lot of topics about motivation topics. That, for instance, regarding people of color or regarding LGBTQ issues. But a lot of times in our classes, we tend to only focus on the canon or focus on the traditional readings. And so we exclude a lot of populations. I think it's just really easy just to kind of expand the kind of class, the kind of topics that you actually include in the class. And so students want to see themselves in the curriculum. And when students don't see themselves, they're not as engaged and not actually as motivated, for instance, in a motivation class, to actually be engaged with the topic. And so that's just one really easy way. And a harder thing for us to do as universities as a whole, we actually need to be, to do a better job as recruiting and retaining more diverse faculty and students. We need to bring people from a more variety of backgrounds. And so if we have a wider variety of students in our classrooms that we're teaching, so we're going to end up with more experiences in the classroom. If we have more diverse professors, we're definitely going to have more diverse experiences, and they're probably going to bring in different types of activities in the class, different types of readings in the class. And so I think as a whole, as an academia, we just need to have a lot more diversity, as racial, ethnic, with different experiences, LGBTQ, people with disabilities. And I just think that we just need to spend more time from that perspective.
So we're going to switch gears just a little bit and talk more from like a methodological point. And so another question that I have for you is, one of the major challenges in studying underrepresented groups, particularly questions of intersectionality, is that of sample size. So do you have any suggestions for overcoming this barrier?
Well, we have to go where underrepresented groups thrive. We can't expect them to actually just show up to our doors in academia. So we have to do a better job of cultivating those relationships. And so we, as researchers, we have a study, we just know, I need, this is what I need for my sample. And we just kind of expect, I don't know, they just kind of come and walk to our door. But, if you want you want to actually have that representation in your study, you have to work to get those people in your study. And it's not going to be easy, because a lot of communities of color, for instance, they aren't very trustworthy of researchers. And so you have to be able to go and build those relationships. You have to build trust, and you have to give back to those communities. You just can't go and take. You got to be willing to give something. And as researchers, we have plenty to give. And it's not always monetary. I mean, you could just go, we have a lot of knowledge, and we are graduate students. We have a lot that we can give back to those communities. And once you develop that sense of trust and relationship, they'd be willing to open doors, and you could come in and collect data, and then, so it becomes mutually beneficial. But we have to be willing to do that. And so we have to establish those relationships and develop a sense of trust.
And so I have one more question for you. A lot of quantitative research to this point often includes race as a control variable. And so how can we as researchers move past controlling for race as a variable, and what types of methods can really help us accomplish this?
Well, I think from my perspective, I may be taking a perspective that's a little different from most people in our field. I think the problems we too often treat race as a demographic variable, but I think it's much, much more than just a demographic variable and something that we should control for. I think we should be looking at race as more of a social cultural variable, and we should be focusing on individuals' experiences that are associated with race. and particularly within schools, because there's so much. Just look at what's going on right now in our world today, particularly what's going on right now, just in our society. That are race based and race focused, and so so it's more than whether or not they are white or black or a Latino. It really is about whether or not that how people see them, how people see you based upon your race, how you may treat yourself, see yourself based upon your race. And so all of that kind of all that impacts kind of who you are and what goes on in schools. And so I think if we start looking at race in that way, and particularly, particularly with motivation, I think we'll learn so much more. But I do think there are times when we have to examine group differences. And so I do realize that race is an easy categorization. And I know that, we do gender, or sometimes we do socioeconomic status. And I know sometimes we just have to do that to examine group differences based upon on people scoring on different constructs. But I think, as you mentioned, the problems that many of our measures and instruments have not been normed using people of color. And so I think we do have to go back and figure out, which constructs have been properly normed and which ones have not. So it might mean that we just have to go and create a whole new set, or have to kind of tweak or revise a whole bunch of them. Because I think too often this has led people to make deficit-based decisions, deficit-based conclusions, and make decisions that have been detrimental, particularly to people of color. And I know particularly to African Americans, there have been a lot of decisions that have been, have made a lot of deficit-based decisions, and so which have really ruined the lives of a lot of people. And so I know you talk about what types of methods can help accomplish this. I think all of them. I think we really need to think about just psychometrics in general. Qualitative research, as you talked about, plus good skill design involves qualitative methods. Is mixed methods as a whole, because you have to do the qualitative, which followed up by skill design. And then once we actually have good skills and instruments in place, we actually have to really have good, rigorous quantitative methods. And so it's everything. But we have to make sure we have representative sampling all along the way.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. So those are the three questions that I had for you today. And so I really want to thank you for joining me today and answering those questions from a very critical perspective. I think this is really going to help us continue this super important conversation. And I know we're all really looking forward to reading more of your upcoming research. So thank you.
Thank you so much for the invitation.